Hey guys, Woods Farm here. Just back out working on the Scout Car, episode 12. Going to be trying to come up with a solution to get a brake booster into the vehicle. If there was one thing we learned from our previous test drive, it was that the brakes were a little inadequate. So we want to try to improve that. We've got a couple ideas of how we can get a brake booster in the system. So I've since gone to Kenny U-Pole and picked up a brake booster that is compatible with the master cylinder we already have. So we're going to play around with installing that. And if that goes well, I'm going to order the parts we need and we're going to start working on the rear brakes. There are a few issues with the rear brakes and a couple of problems we have to overcome. Plumbing in the lines should be pretty straightforward, but it turns out there's it's difficult to get some of the parts we need, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so that's where we're at. We've got the master cylinder, the brake booster bolted together. We've fabricated a new mounting plate at the bottom of the firewall, and it's all bolted in. There's enough clearance for the master cylinder. The real concern was the reservoir not having enough space. It is going to be difficult to fill it up, but we'll just have to deal with that. So the next thing is to figure out a way to connect the brake booster to the brake pedal. So previously the master cylinder, the push rod, if you want to call it, was connected much higher up on the brake pedal because everything was higher up. What we're going to have to do is the brake pedal here, we're going to have to extend it a few inches down and have a place for it to hook up to this rod. Now this is roughly where the pedal was sitting. I think we're going to have it up a little bit more in that area, and we're just going to have to play around with the arc and figure out exactly where the best place to hook up this push rod. So by moving the brake pedal forward, we're going to have to reposition the gas pedal, and that guide plate, I'm going to have to cut it out and move it for the third time, hopefully the last time, but we need to get that gas pedal up half an inch or an inch just to kind of be in the proper position. Okay, so I don't know if I mentioned before, but we're having problems getting some parts for the rear drum brakes. It just turns out that, you start getting into the late 80s, I guess the parts are kind of dried up. Some of the parts for the parking brake system, I can't seem to source, at least locally and at a reasonable price. And it also turns out some of these other smaller pieces, I'm also having problems getting. We were missing some of the stuff, particularly on one side of the axle. It was missing the drum and pretty much most of the brake parts. These things here are brake shoe links, and good luck finding those. You go to Napa and it's very difficult for them to source these. What these do is they are part of the wheel cylinder. They go into the wheel cylinder, and they are what pushes on the brake shoe. And they kind of slot in like that. So I got a set from Napa, but they are too short. I don't know if you can see that. The originals are probably 1/4 of an inch longer. So that gave me a little cause for concern. These axles had an 11-inch brake drum and a 12-inch. We have the 12, so I think that's why these are a little bit longer. So the ones Napa were able to get, no good. And then another local parts store, they gave me this, and you can see how that looks a lot different compared to this. The length seems about right, and it does fit into the slot, so I think mechanically it would work. However, this one is much fatter and it doesn't want to actually fit into that rubber boot of the wheel cylinder. So we've got a problem. We need to make these parts. So we're going to go full Mad Max, and we're just going to fabricate our own. Right now our idea is to use the end of a leg bolt or a carriage bolt, and we're going to fabricate this into a brake shoe link. Okay, so I just got a bunch of stuff in the mail, made a trip to Napa, got a lot of parts. We got brake hose for the rear axle, 2 wheel cylinders for the rear brakes. We're starting to get into some electrical, so I needed some ring terminals, different sizes. These are little red dash warning lights. We're gonna rig up the oil pressure warning light soon. I got some brass fittings. This is for the vacuum system for the brake booster. Brake fittings. Just got these. These are flanges for the exhaust. Unfortunately, they're too big. I'm going to have to order the next size down, but we are going to be eventually thinking about the exhaust system. So we've got a lot of stuff to keep us busy. Okay, so here's the new piece that we fabricated. This is the original, and then this one here is the one that we made just out of a carriage bolt. You can see how it fits in that slot on the brake shoe. Fits in there, and I'm pretty confident these are going to work for our application. And sometimes when you can't get the parts you need, you just have to get creative. Okay, we've got the second brake line plumbed into the master cylinder, and this line goes to the rear brakes. So we've got it all directed underneath the floor and along the frame. We just got to add some clips to secure it along the side of the frame rail. We've got the new wheel cylinders installed, and we've got the rear brake lines also set up. I had to fabricate a bracket there to hold the flex hose, and the way we decided to go with it is to keep the flex hose on the driver's side of the differential. And we need to make another bracket and connect the flex hose to the hard line that goes up to the front. Okay, next thing we got to do is add an extension onto the bottom of the brake pedal. Now that we've moved the master cylinder lower, that was the previous pivot point. Now we're going to add an extension on the bottom, and the pivot point will be about 1.5 inches, 2 inches below the pedal. Still plenty of clearance above the floor, so that shouldn't be a problem. So hopefully this works. Okay, so I've gone ahead and drilled a second hole a little further back, and this just changes the pivot point of the brake pedal. It gives us kind of 2 options to set it up. I'm thinking having the pivot point a little further back is going to kind of help everything move and work together. If it doesn't, we can always move it back to the front hole and see how that works. Okay, so we had to recycle and reuse this kind of clip thing here that is part of the brake, parking brake mechanism. It seems like it's acting as a kind of a hold down for the top of the shoe. We've got all new springs and hardware, new wheel cylinders, and our brake shoe links that we fabricated look like they're going to work. Okay, there's the extension on the bottom of the brake pedal. You can see how it's dropped down a couple inches below the pedal, and it's connected to the rod that goes into the brake booster. We also had to work on the gas pedal and modify it because everything moved a few inches forward towards the front of the vehicle, so we needed to extend the linkage and play around with how everything worked for the gas pedal. Originally it was linked directly to the cable, but now we had to make this extension bar. One thing we did notice is we had the engine running and there is vacuum at the brake booster, and it seems like the pedal is very hard, especially when the engine is not running. When you turn the engine on and you got vacuum, it seems like the pedal softens up a little bit, and Also at the back brakes, we were kind of testing it out, and it seems like there might be more clamping force, which is the whole reason for doing all this. Okay, here's our new brake drum. Wasn't able to get one at Napa, but luckily another auto parts supplier was able to track me down one, and ended up only being a little bit more money than getting something from eBay. And I did want the option to be able to return it, but we got it home and we noticed that the diameter is the same and the depth is the same, and it fits on our hubs, but it doesn't have this groove like the original. So we're really hoping it's going to work. We don't have a lot of options, so we're definitely going to test it out, and maybe we'll get lucky. Okay, so we've got another successful test drive under our belt. We took it out onto the open road and tested the drive line and seen how well it performed. There wasn't a lot of crazy vibrations coming out of the drive shafts, so that's a real big bonus. Not quite sure how fast we got up, but more than enough speed for what we're going to be doing with this vehicle. And the brakes seem to work a lot better with the booster. We are going to wait until the spring when all the snow and ice is gone, and we're going to test it again on the bare road when there's a little more traction and just see how well the brakes do in those conditions. I think they're going to be fine, but I do have another idea of how to actually change the pedal configuration to get a little more leverage to the brake booster. So if we have to go back and revisit that, we will. Time to start thinking about some mufflers. I ordered some exhaust manifold flanges. They were the wrong size, and I remeasured the bolt hole pattern, and I'm actually having problems finding something that fits, which I find is a little unusual considering how common this engine is, but everything seems to be too big. Also starting to dabble in the electrical. I realized as we were adding circuits, the wiring was already starting to get a little out of control. We were just kind of adding everything onto the battery terminals, positive and negative, with a switch in between. And right now what I'm doing is I'm going back and I'm going to try to redo everything on a mock board here. That'll allow us to put this into a fuse panel box later. And hopefully if we try to be organized now as we continuously add circuits, when it comes time to do the wire properly and do a wiring harness and wire everything, it should be a lot smoother, and there hopefully won't be a lot of wasted wire. Okay, we're going to wrap this video up here. Went a little long because of the test drive, but really happy that the brakes are working a lot better now. Things we're going to be working on in the future, hopefully a gas tank and a proper fuel system. Going to be looking to getting some shocks mounted and fabricated, put in place. We need shocks front and back to complement the leaf springs, and probably the radiator and the alternator. Those are other big kind of mechanical components that we have to figure out. So keep watching the videos to see the progress. We're well on track to have the mechanical done by spring, and then next fall when we get back working on it, we'll be right into body work hopefully. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below, and as always, thanks for watching.